Welcome back! After discussing all the Central Powers, it's time to talk about the opposing side, starting with the Russian Empire. In this video, I will talk about Russia's position, its objectives, and eventual downfall that was followed by 4 years of civil war and a Bolshevik victory. Russia had been allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary, but opposing interests in the Balkans, along with the increasingly aggressive posture of Germany, changed all that. In the 1890s, alliance with France was formed, and while France and Britain started moving closer to each other, the British continued to view Russia with suspicion, mainly because of their ambitions in Central Asia and a Russian interest in the Bosporus Straits and the British-dominated Mediterranean. In 1905, Russia was defeated by Japan in the Far East. This soon led to strikes and an uprising. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to make concessions and accept reforms, establishing the First Duma, although this was followed by political violence and repression, as the Tsar remained an absolute leader. The Anglo-Russian Convention in 1907 settled disputes in Asia and created the Triple Entente against the Triple Alliance, which was threatening the status quo in Europe. The Balkan League was created to counter growing Austrian influence in the region. This coalition almost pushed the Ottoman Empire out of Europe, although in a second conflict in 1913, Bulgaria became the next target. In the same year, Nicholas II approved a large increase in the army, which unnerved both Germany and Austria-Hungary. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo the following year, Austria first handed over an ultimatum, then invaded Serbia on the 28th of July, which was interpreted by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Sazonov as a conspiracy to end Russian influence in the region. As Russia viewed itself as the defender of fellow Slavs, it mobilized 2 days later, although Germany declared war first, on the 1st of August, followed by Austria-Hungary 5 days later. In November, hostilities began with the Ottomans after their warships bombarded the port of Odessa and other Russian locations. In 1914, Russia could muster a huge army with 1.4 million men and 3 million immediately available reserves, which is why France desperately needed their help against the German juggernaut. French loans had helped improve the Russian infrastructure, particularly the rail network, which was essential for a quick mobilization. The Germans were indeed surprised. While they were busy advancing into Belgium and France, Russian troops invaded East Prussia and counterattacked in Galicia, overwhelming the 4 Austro-Hungarian armies there. War on the much longer Eastern Front was more fluid, with significant movements in both directions. The initial offensive against Germany ended in a disaster when the newly mobilized German forces, led by Field Marshal Hindenburg, flanked them and were victorious in the Battle of Tannenberg. 2 Russian armies were destroyed by September, partly due to rapid German movements, but also because their radio communications were not encoded. In the meantime, Galicia was conquered, but the Carpathian Mountains stopped the advance. Subsequent winter battles resulted in huge losses on both sides. Just like Austria-Hungary, Russia lost its best troops, along with the better trained officers and NCOs, who could not be replaced later on. The problem was that Russia was not prepared for war. Its economy was the weakest and least developed among the great powers. Its soldiers were not as educated and well-trained as their French or German counterparts. Shortages of ammunition, guns, transports, and even boots appeared quickly. Russia needed the help of its Entente allies, but since the Dardanelles were soon closed down by the Ottomans, new routes had to be found. Vladivostok was thousands of kilometers away. Goods then had to be transported on the Trans-Siberian, which took weeks, so Arkhangelsk became the most important port, where large shipments could be delivered. A new rail line had to be built to connect the ice-free port of Murmansk to Moscow, but this was completed only in 1917, when it was too late. In March 1915, the fortress of Przemysl fell to the Russians, but soon a German-Austrian offensive routed their forces near Gorlice Tarnów. The Russian side suffered from incompetence, corruption, and supply shortages. The latter was alleviated by the next year, but Poland was lost, along with parts of Belarus and the Baltic states. The situation was much better on the Caucasus front, but it remained a sideshow until early 1916, when a new Russian offensive commenced to help out the British, who were stuck in Mesopotamia. Trabzon was captured in April, but the emphasis remained on the main front, where a major offensive was launched near Lake Naroch in the north. Due to ineffective bombardment and insufficient reconnaissance, it failed, leading to high casualties. A much better prepared attack was launched by General Brusilov in Galicia, employing more guns and new tactics like close-range surprise attacks. 500,000 Austro-Hungarian soldiers were killed or taken prisoner, but the initial victories were followed by a slowdown, as there were not enough reserves and supplies to maintain the advance. It was the last successful Russian offensive, which almost knocked Austria-Hungary out of the war, but the only major result was the entry of Romania, which in the end didn't help, as Romania was quickly overrun by the Central Powers, extending the Eastern Front all the way to the Black Sea. Conditions in Russia worsened. Internal tensions reached the boiling point. Millions were lost in the war, which brought only suffering. The economy further weakened. The grain exports, which were a primary source of revenue, could not be maintained. The population was unhappy and increasingly blamed the Tsar for everything, partly because Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich was sacked and Nicholas II became commander-in-chief, essentially assuming all responsibility for subsequent military failures. The already low standard of living, the fact that the war consumed all resources, along with food shortages, resulted in a massive protest on International Women's Day on the 8th of March 1917. 90,000 women marched on the streets of Petrograd, demanding bread and peace. Everybody was fed up with the war. The next day, many men joined the march, followed by several army units. Nicholas II was soon forced to abdicate. A provisional government was established, along with the Petrograd Soviet. These two bodies shared power, the former representing the bourgeoisie, the latter controlling workers and soldiers, while the Tsar no longer had any authority or much respect. Russia was able to launch one last major offensive in July 1917, supported by War Minister Alexander Kerensky, led by General Brusilov, but it soon fell apart as the troops mutinied and refused to fight any longer. The desire for peace led to the July Days, during which a disorganized protest was disbanded in Petrograd. For now, the provisional government survived. Kerensky became its new head, but the Petrograd Soviet continued to move to the left, even after many Bolshevik leaders were arrested. Lenin, whose ideas about immediate peace were becoming more popular, fled to Finland. Then General Kornilov led an army to the capital, but his troops were convinced to stand down, preventing a right-wing coup d'etat. The Entente tried to keep Russia in the war, but the Russian people would have none of it. Kerensky's popularity quickly sank, even after he formally abolished the monarchy and proclaimed the Russian Republic in September. On the 7th of November, the Bolshevik Revolution, with significant German support, removed the provisional government and terminated the Triple Entente, ending all hostilities with the Central Powers. Germany and Austria-Hungary used this opportunity and seized more territory before they finally sat down to start the peace talks in Brest-Litovsk. The eventual treaty, signed in March 1918, affirmed the independence of Ukraine and united the Baltic countries under German leadership. In the end, the outcome was irrelevant as the war took another turn and the Central Powers asked for armistice. The civil war in Russia continued for years, with huge casualties, famine, and the eventual stabilization of the Bolshevik regime, but that will be the subject of another video. To sum up, we can say that the least developed and economically weakest great power threw in the towel first, after putting up a good fight against the German war machine and its allies. The Tsar, who continued to believe in his own authority and right to rule, was swept away by a massive wave created by the Great War. He would not be the last ruler to leave the podium. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.